Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas construction update video. For today, I'd like to revisit a discussion we had on my 30 August video where we talked about pre-production efforts and Tesla's goal to try to begin initial Model Y production in October. And some viewers were a little bit confused if that meant the entire factory had to be done in October, and that's not the case. Their goal is to try to simultaneously begin initial small-scale production while also continuing the construction of Giga Texas. We do have an example with Giga Shanghai to kind of draw some conclusions or some parallels, and we're going to go through that today to help put this into better context. Let's start with the Tesla investor report from Q3 2019, where they talked about the initial test runs at Giga Shanghai for Model 3 began in October 2019. And as you can see here, they were doing full vehicles on a trial basis from body and paint to general assembly, and they still had some work to do to get to production beginning. To see how this played out, I looked at Tesla Daily, Rob Maurer's channel, from the 30th of August. The link is in the video description for more information. He showed that initial small-scale production began around November, December of 2019, but the actual production ramp began in January of 2020. And you can see that that ramp with the numbers here that Rob presented started off with about 1,000 cars per week in that first quarter of the ramp, and then it progressed about 3 quarters later to getting into that 4,500 to 5,000 cars per week roughly, and then after 4 quarters it went over about 5,000 cars per week. And to put into context, Giga Shanghai at that time was about 1/3 the size of Giga Texas and was only producing the Model 3. So based on Giga Shanghai's experiences, how might Texas compare and what might we expect as we move forward? By comparison, Giga Texas is going to be also ramping up 4680 cells, Cybertruck, and possibly Semi in addition to the Model Y. At the same time, they're going to be continuing the completion of the main factory construction site. They'll be doing support infrastructure, finalizing key suppliers, setting up operations, and also getting Giga presses for the Cybertruck and more for Model Y at the same time. And it doesn't include macro environmental impacts such as the chip shortage or maybe COVID constraints, which are very possible in 2022. All of these issues may affect the way that Giga Texas ramps compared to Giga Shanghai. And as an additional data point, Elon recently tweeted about the progress at Berlin, and his quote here in the tweet is very applicable for Giga Texas as well, where he says, "Bear in mind that it takes about a year for a factory to ramp up to full volume production." And I think that's accurate for Giga Texas. With these factors in mind, let's take a look at a hypothetical example for discussion about how this timeline might work out. Model Y initial first test was in the last part of August. It looks like sometime in the October timeframe, Tesla may try to begin the initial production and then ramp from that point in time. And you can see that in the ramp illustration at the bottom. So for this example, let's assume everything goes really well and the ramping is very quickly. What we can see maybe is somewhere between 250 and 1,000 cars per week starting in that October timeframe, working up to over 4,500 cars per week in about 4 quarters. That would be about 4,000 on the small side cars per quarter to over 50,000 cars per quarter by the time we get into summer of 2022. And for this example, let's assume that things go a little bit slower and there's more difficulty in getting that ramp going on. And here would be a probable ramp. Starting off in that first quarter, somewhere about 0 to 300 cars per week, let's say, working its way in 4 quarters to over about 3,500 to 4,000 cars per week. That would show us that in the first quarter, which would be towards the end of this year, we may see only about 2,000 or 3,000 cars. But as the time goes on, maybe by the time we get to summer of next year, it'd be over 40,000 Model Ys. And this slide shows you the comparison between the two, the fast ramp and the probable ramp. Again, this is a hypothetical example for discussion, and you may have different opinions, but I think this is based on what we've heard from Tesla and what we saw at Giga Shanghai. So as a wrap-up of this discussion, just to remind you, here's the timeline and the theoretical production. We also have the construction of Giga Texas, the 4680, Cybertruck, and maybe even Semi at the same time of ramping Model Y in 2022. They also are going to be continuing the construction of the main factory, expanding suppliers, and working on the support infrastructure around the main site as well. And of course, those macro environmental impacts may be affecting Tesla and the ramp in 2022. I hope that you found this theoretical discussion helpful and thought-provoking, and I would love to see your comments. Thanks. Before we begin, I would like to say thank you to my patrons for your generous support. Patreon members get access to high-resolution photos, previews, and direct dialogue with me. If you would like to support my channel, please consider becoming a patron using this link, which is also in the video description. Please also consider subscribing and hitting the like button. Thanks. My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas.